They called him just a pizza boy until he rewrote a billion-dollar algorithm and exposed a racist billionaire on camera, all to honor his mother, the cleaning lady no one ever saw. Marcus Williams had no idea his life would change the day he stepped onto the 20th floor of Technova Solutions. With a pizza box in hand and worn sneakers on his feet, he stood unnoticed at the reception counter, watching a wall of error messages blink across giant monitors. A group of frantic engineers whispered and typed at lightning speed. "They're using the wrong data structure," Marcus whispered to himself. The receptionist, blonde and manicured, gave him a sideways glance.
"Excuse me?"
Marcus cleared his throat.
I think their system keeps crashing because they're using linear search algorithms where hash tables would be faster.
She stared at him like he had spoken an alien language, then laughed.
Right. Thanks for the TED Talk, pizza boy.
What she didn't know was that Marcus had been reading coding manuals since he was 10, while waiting for his mother to finish her cleaning shifts in the same building. As the engineers scrambled, Marcus noticed one of the executives, a man in a gray suit, approach with frustration. Blackstone, the CEO. Without thinking, Marcus stepped forward.
"Excuse me, sir. I think I can fix that."
Laughter erupted.
You're joking, right?
Blackstone scoffed.
What makes you think you can do something my team of MIT graduates can't?
Marcus didn't blink.
"You've lost $97 million over 6 months. I can stop it in under 15 minutes.
A hush fell. Phones came out. Security was called. But Blackstone, always the showman, smirked.
"Fine. If this is going to be a circus, let's entertain the crowd."
A laptop was brought over. The engineers, now amused, stood back.
"If you don't fix it in 15 minutes,
Blackstone sneered.
you and your mother are banned from this building. She'll lose her job."
Marcus froze. That was the real threat. His mother, Rosa Williams, had spent 15 years scrubbing these offices. Getting home at 3 a.m., her hands cracked and bleeding. She had given up her life so he could dream. He sat down and began typing. At first, no one took him seriously. The receptionist even filmed it.
Going viral.
She whispered.
Watch him crash the whole server.
But 5 minutes in, the engineers stopped smiling. He wasn't guessing. He was restructuring the code from memory, trimming unnecessary loops, rebuilding the data flow, minimizing CPU load. By minute 10, the VP of Tech was leaning in.
This can't be real!
Marcus pressed enter. The screen lit up green. No crashes, no lag.
Query load reduced by 94%!
Someone whispered.
Response time.
Down to 2.6 seconds. The room erupted into stunned silence. Blackstone's face twisted. "You got lucky." Marcus didn't flinch. "I can do it again. From scratch. But next time, you pay me." Phones were still filming. Marcus stood and looked Blackstone in the eye. "You judged me for how I looked. You didn't ask who I was." Blackstone waved for security. "Get him out of here." "I'll walk out," Marcus said. "But I'm not leaving quietly." Later that night, Rosa pulled out an old shoebox. Inside were crumpled receipts, old invoices, torn Post-its, all evidence. She had cleaned offices where Blackstone's voice could be heard yelling behind doors. She had found discarded printouts of bonuses funneled to executives while janitors' paychecks bounced. "They never saw me," she said. "So I started keeping their secrets." Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights building a timeline. With the help of a friend, David Chun, an investigative journalist, they began uncovering what Technova had buried. Tax fraud, racial hiring bias, illegal firings. Still, Blackstone struck first. He filed a lawsuit accusing Marcus of intellectual theft, leaked private photos, smeared his name online. But Marcus had been recording too. At the public board meeting, in front of cameras and shareholders, Blackstone took the stage with a calm smile. "We've been infiltrated by someone who exploited our system," he declared. "We have proof. He stole our code." Marcus stood, calm and collected. "Actually, I saved your company." He connected his tablet to the main screen. Up flashed surveillance footage, not of Marcus, but of Blackstone in a secret meeting with a rival company, selling Technova's algorithm for $12 million. Audio played. Gasps filled the room. More images. Payroll fraud. Racist emails. A ledger showing payments to keep harassment cases quiet. Then came Rosa's photos, voicemails, deleted files she'd quietly swept into a flash drive over the years. Blackstone's voice was on every one. "Fire the janitor if she files a complaint. No one listens to the help anyway." The crowd turned. One by one, board members stood in silence. Then came the handcuffs Rosa Williams had never planned to raise a genius. She only planned to raise a good man. It was winter in the Bronx when she first brought Marcus into Technova's back service entrance. Snow caked their coats. His shoes were too tight, the soles patched with duct tape. She clutched his hand as they stepped into the elevator. "Don't talk to anyone, stay quiet, color in your book. Mama has to work." Marcus nodded, his eyes wide as the elevator dinged higher and higher. Each floor lined with frosted glass and stainless steel, the kind of place they showed in movies, but never belonged to people like them. She tucked him behind a filing cabinet in a vacant corner on the 18th floor. That night, she mopped in silence while Marcus opened his notebook, but soon he wandered. Rosa came back an hour later, heart in her throat, panic crawling over her skin. She found him in a dark conference room, dry erase marker in hand, coloring lines over a wall-sized whiteboard filled with multicolored code. "What are you doing?" she hissed, rushing in. Marcus blinked, innocent. "I think this line here," he pointed with his tiny fingers, "should go under this one. That's why their game keeps freezing." She didn't understand any of it, but she stared at the boy. Her boy. Something in her gut shifted, something she didn't yet have a name for. The next day, while cleaning the executive break room, she took a used textbook someone had thrown out. Python for data science. It was water-damaged and coffee-stained, but she wrapped it in a plastic bag and brought it home. Marcus devoured it in 3 weeks. By age 10, he was fixing the neighbors' laptops. By 12, he hacked into his middle school's attendance system, not to cause trouble, but to delete records of kids who skipped school to care for younger siblings, so they wouldn't get expelled. He never asked for credit. He just kept building. By 14, Marcus had built a predictive program to detect water leaks in apartment complexes. A local housing board adopted it. Rosa cried when the first check came. $500. "That's rent," he said, smiling. But Rosa knew. That wasn't rent. That was his childhood, being cashed in. They lived in a one-bedroom walk-up. Rosa slept on the floor beside a bucket catching rainwater. Marcus slept on the couch with his laptop balanced on his chest. One night, after another long shift, Rosa found Marcus in the dark. The only light in the room came from his screen, glowing lines of code flickering like fireflies across his glasses. "What are you building now?" she whispered, sitting beside him. "A way out." She didn't ask what he meant. She just nodded. She knew. He applied to Stanford the next year and got in with a full ride. She screamed with joy when he showed her the letter, jumped and danced like she hadn't in years, cooked arroz con pollo and invited every neighbor over. But Marcus sat quiet. "I'm not going." Rosa froze. "Why not?" You work 3 jobs, you sleep 4 hours. You're still paying off debt from when I was born. How can I go to California while you clean other people's toilets?" She slapped the table, not out of anger, but out of heartbreak. "Don't you ever throw away your future for mine." He didn't answer, but that night he declined the offer. Instead, he took a job delivering pizzas, and on his off days, he'd sit in the Technova lobby with a busted laptop, studying the engineers' conversations, watching their screens when they left them open, memorizing patterns, security protocols, and AI modeling language. To them, he was invisible. To Rosa, he was incandescent. One Sunday evening, Rosa came home with a swollen wrist. She tried to hide it, but Marcus saw the bruises. "What happened?" he asked, standing up. She brushed past him. "One of the execs dropped a glass sculpture. I tried to catch it. It shattered." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You have to quit." "I can't. We have no health insurance. I'll figure something out." "I already did," she said, pulling out another envelope. Her hands were shaking. Inside were documents, photocopies, handwritten notes, badge logs. "I've been watching them," she said softly. "Listening. Collecting." "For what?" "For justice," she whispered. "But I didn't know what to do with it. Until you." That was when Marcus started preparing for war. He coded through the nights, studied legal protocols, contacted whistleblower sites anonymously. He practiced debates with Rosa at the kitchen table. How to talk, how to project, how to destroy a man who had always walked away from his sins without a scratch. "I'm scared," Rosa admitted once. "They have power. We only have truth. Then we're already stronger than them," he said. 2 weeks before the showdown, Rosa collapsed while cleaning a restroom on the 23rd floor. The security camera showed Blackstone walking past her body and not even glancing down. That was the final spark. Marcus walked into the building the next day with a pizza box and a plan that would change history. Now, as he stood before the board and revealed the truth, he glanced at his mother through the glass window. She stood tall. No uniform, no mop. Just a floral dress and quiet pride in her eyes. And Marcus realized the flashbacks weren't just memories. They were blueprints. Every insult, every late-night shift, every ignored cry for help, it had all built this moment. The courtroom was silent. Marcus stood firm, shoulders square, eyes locked on the judge. The projector behind him displayed the last damning image, a confidential email from Technova's top executive, approving the false narrative used to destroy his career. Across the room, Richard Blackstone sat still, his hands clenched on the mahogany table, his jaw tight. His legal team whispered furiously, but no one dared rise. The air was too heavy, thoughtful. "Mr. Blackstone, do you have any objections?" Before Richard could answer, Marcus took a breath. "Your Honor, before he speaks, I'd like to submit one final piece of evidence." The judge gave a nod. Marcus clicked his laptop. The lights dimmed. A grainy security video filled the courtroom screen. A cleaning woman entered the Technova executive lounge, mop in hand. Rosa Santos. She moved quietly, unaware of the camera. Then, the door opened again. Richard Blackstone stepped in, on a call. Rosa politely nodded. He didn't nod back. He didn't speak. Instead, he reached for coffee, then shoved past her roughly, knocking her off balance. Her wrist struck the corner of a countertop. She fell. He glanced once, then walked away, still on the phone. Gasps filled the room. Sad. "That was my mother. She reported the injury. They said she was clumsy, that she was getting old. He turned toward the jury, angry. She still has pain in that wrist today. But Technova never logged the incident, because they didn't care. Not about her, not about anyone who looked like her. Serious. Your Honor, this shows not just negligence, but systemic bias, disregard for safety, and clear targeting. The judge turned slowly toward Blackstone. Direct. Mr. Blackstone, do you wish to respond? Richard stood. Coolly. I don't recall that day. Dismissive. And even if it happened, we've employed thousands. Accidents occur. That doesn't make me responsible for every mop bucket in the building. Murmurs of disgust spread through the courtroom. You remember everything when it threatens your power. But people like my mother? We're invisible until we fight back. He stepped closer to the jury. You've seen the financial manipulation. You've seen the emails, the video, the lies, the demotions.
But beneath all of it is a belief that no one would ever question him. He pointed at Richard. No one like me. The judge leaned forward again. The jury will recess and prepare their recommendation. As the bailiff escorted the jury out, Richard's voice rose behind Marcus. This is all about revenge, isn't it? You couldn't make it in the company, so you decided to burn it down. Marcus turned back slowly. No. I made it. I made it in spite of everything. I earned every promotion, every sleepless night. You just couldn't stand that a man like me outshined you. Richard's face reddened. Marcus leaned closer. You silenced my mother. You blackballed me. But today you're the one without a voice. He walked back to his seat. 20 minutes later, the jury returned. The foreman stood. Your Honor, we find in favor of the plaintiff. Technova is found liable for wrongful termination, defamation, racial discrimination, and retaliatory practices. The courtroom erupted. Rosa, sitting quietly in the back, placed a hand over her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not out of pain, out of pride. Marcus closed his eyes, not for revenge, for justice, and for every unseen soul who had ever been told they didn't belong. The courthouse doors opened. Marcus stepped into the sunlight, greeted by a storm of flashing cameras and shouting reporters, but he didn't flinch. He reached for his mother's hand. Rosa stood beside him, frail, proud, silent. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not for reporters, but for something deeper. The truth, perhaps. Recognition. Or maybe, closure. A young journalist leaned in. Mr. Santos, what's next for you after defeating one of the most powerful CEOs in the country? Marcus didn't smile. He simply said, This was never about defeating anyone. It was about proving the truth matters, that people matter. Then he led his mother past the noise toward a quiet street, waiting beyond the chaos. 3 weeks later, Richard Blackstone's empire began to crumble. Stockholders panicked. The board called for his resignation. Major sponsors pulled out. Technova's name trended for all the wrong reasons. But Marcus? He didn't chase headlines. Instead, he opened a small office in a brick building in the Bronx. No gold plaque, no secretary. Just a clean room, 2 chairs, and a mission. He called it the Integrity Initiative. It wasn't just a nonprofit. It was a lifeline for people who had no voice. Former employees of Technova walked through his door first, then nurses, janitors, veterans, single mothers, fathers, college interns, warehouse workers, each with their own scars.
each with their own story. Marcus listened. Not like a lawyer or a journalist, but like a son. Like a man who had once been invisible too. One evening, after filing yet another claim on behalf of a young delivery worker, injured and discarded by a billion-dollar firm, Marcus sat alone. He stared at a worn photo on his desk. It showed Rosa, years younger, standing outside a factory gate in her apron, holding toddler Marcus in her arms. He touched the glass gently. Then his phone buzzed. Questioning. CBS requests your presence for a national interview. Time slot, 7:30 p.m. Are you available? He typed back, firmly. Decline. Determined. I'm needed here. Then he looked out the window. Across the street, Rosa waited under a dim street lamp. She held a brown paper bag in her hands. Homemade dinner. Marcus stepped out to meet her. Softly. You could be in a studio right now, she said softly, handing him the bag. He smiled. Warmly. I'd rather be here with you. She looked up at him. Proudly. You didn't just win, mijo. Thoughtfully. You changed something. He nodded. Emphatically. Not just for us. For everyone. In a private retreat outside the city, Richard Blackstone sat alone in a mansion surrounded by lawyers. His portrait, once hanging proudly in Technova's hall, now rested face down in the study. A former board member called him that night. They're investigating more now, Richard. Warning, your offshore accounts, the buyouts, the pressure you put on whistleblowers. You might want to prepare for... He hung up, then poured himself a drink. For the first time, no amount of power or money could silence what had already begun. Because one man stood up, and the world had finally listened. Months passed. The courtroom victory became a landmark case taught in law schools. But Marcus never boasted, never turned it into a brand. He just kept showing up. He bought his mother a small house in Queens, with a garden she'd always dreamed of. Every Saturday, he helped her plant tomatoes, jalapenos, and lavender. And sometimes, he'd sit quietly and ask her questions about her past, about his father, about her youth, about the days before Technova. One afternoon, she said, somberly, "You know what hurt the most? It wasn't the fall. It was thinking no one would believe me, bitterly, that I was just another brown cleaning lady to them." Marcus replied, reassuringly, "You're not invisible anymore, Mama. You never were." She smiled and squeezed his hand. "Neither are you." A quiet courtroom. Empty now. Just rows of wooden benches, echoing silence. But in the center, that same chair Marcus once stood in. A single ray of sunlight falls across it, like a spotlight, like memory, like justice. And as the camera slowly pulls back, a voice fades in. They tried to bury him in silence, but he answered with truth. And now, the world knows his name. Encouragingly, if this story moved you, share it. One out there may be fighting a silent battle right now, and your voice could be the echo they need. Comment where you're watching from, and what part of the story hit you the hardest.